2. Neoplatonism. The dialectical nature of Greek thought led inevitably to Neoplatonism. Dialectical philosophy is any system of thought which tries to reconcile two basically hostile concepts and to retain both of the alien substances or worlds within its system. Dialectical thought thus shows a tension between its two alien constituent members, and this tension finally resolves itself by a decision in favour of one of the elements. For Greek thought, two substances existed. On the one hand are ideas, mind or spirit, the world of forms, and on the other hand is the world of matter, of particulars as against universals, of the many as against the one. Since each was an independent substance, there was no effective and necessary link between the world of mind and the world of matter, and as a result the two tended to fall apart as philosophy pursued the logic of such a starting point. Neoplatonism developed in Alexandria and spread throughout the ancient world. Basic to Neoplatonism was the emphasis on mind or ideas as the true or more important substance, so that the superior man, discerning the irrelevance and or illusory nature of the material world, concentrated on the things of the mind or spirit. Very important in the development of Neoplatonism was the influence of India. Apollonius of Tyana went to India to consult Brahmin thinkers. Plotinus went to Persia with the Roman army in order to, quote, gather wisdom, end quote, from, quote unquote, Oriental thinkers. The source of Neoplatonism, however, was not in India, nor was it in Plotinus. It was Plato and Greek philosophy, and it was a natural and legitimate development thereof. The function of India was that, by providing a similar world of ideas, it confirmed the belief that the universals of Neoplatonism were innate in the human mind, and that all men everywhere, when they plumbed the depths of their souls, came up with these same ideas. Neoplatonism as a formal school of philosophy held sway in the academies of the Greco-Roman world for centuries. When the Edict of Justinian in 529 closed the last academy in Athens, there had been 800 years of Platonic teaching at that school. The formal school of Neoplatonism became more and more anti-Christian and irrelevant. The real history of Neoplatonism lies elsewhere. What Neoplatonism offered men was the belief that it represented a common world of truths shared by thinkers in Asia, Africa, and Europe, a common ground philosophy open to use by all men as the foundation of human thought. Clement of Alexandria treated it as neutral ground which all men could use. It meant that the timeless and the spiritual alone are truly real, so that the material and the historical were depreciated. Quote, the monks tried to combine apostolic life with a philosophy which finds its highest expression in the renunciation of the material for the sake of the spiritual, in making the soul less of a partner with the body and more of a master, end quote. Pagan mystics had, quote, prayed to be delivered from the flesh rather than from sin. The body was a prison or a tomb, disassociation from which was the soul's one hope. Salvation, therefore, meant relief, if possible, from suffering in this present life, and release from the shame and limitation of the body in the life to come. End quote. The biblical doctrine of the resurrection of the body prevented Christians from going quite that far, but they still pressed the presuppositions of Neoplatonism to the fullest possible extent within a facade of the faith. The common ground of Neoplatonist ideas infiltrated Islam also, and the Sufis very clearly showed the influence of Neoplatonism. There are many variations in Neoplatonism, but in essence they all view the real world as essentially a unity which can be called mind or spirit. The world of nature is either an illusory or an inferior realm because it passes away, whereas mind or spirit seeks to realize itself as pure existence, unhampered by the material and transient. According to Lewis, quote, Plotinus and Hegel shake hands, end quote. Quote, For Plotinus, the whole world process is summed up in the double conception of the outgoing of all things from the one, the divine, and the return of all things to the one. End quote. For such a philosophy, the soul is essentially good, but it is held in a prison house of flesh. Liberation and/or salvation means to despise material things and concentrate on spiritual things. For biblical faith, there is nothing evil in the body, nor does sin spring from the presence of the soul in the body and in a material world. Quote, conversion means not the turning of the soul to seek higher and nobler objects of desire, but a complete change of mind, whereby the self-centered will is changed to a theocentric will, subject to the will of God. End quote. The Neoplatonic goal, as expressed in Marxist terminology, is a movement from the kingdom of necessity, the realm of the material and its power, to the kingdom of freedom, the realm of mind or spirit. The chains of the material world must be broken and mind established in the purity of freedom from it. In some forms of Neoplatonism, from origin to the present, mind or spirit expresses itself as love, and, quote, love is an elemental force found in all men, end quote. Love must choose between the spiritual and the material world. For Dante, God is, quote, the love that moves the sun and the other stars, end quote, and which at the same time moves his own, quote, desire and will, end quote, upward to itself. The movement upward in Dante is Neoplatonistic to the core. Essentially, the movement upward is the natural direction of the soul, whereas failure to do so is unnatural and alien to the soul and is therefore its damnation. Both Plotinus and Porphyry attacked Christianity for its downward movement, the incarnation, whereby God became flesh in order to restore man to his rightful place on earth, as God's vicegerent called to exercise dominion and to subdue the earth under God. Rather than a concern with the earth, the downward motive, theirs was an insistence on an abandonment of the earth in an upward movement. Later Neoplatonism made room for this descent by calling it a descent to make possible man's ascent. As some theologians expressed this heresy, God became man so that man might become God. All things were reinterpreted in terms of this Neoplatonic motive. Thus in Pseudo-Dionysius, quote, fellowship with God does not occur on our level, but on the divine level. This is best shown by Dionysius' conception of prayer. It might seem as if in prayer we drew God's blessing down to us, but this is not the case. God remains in his transcendence, and the effect of prayer is that we raise ourselves up to God and are united with him. End quote. Thus, in prayer, instead of gaining God's guidance and his prospering hand upon our activities in a very material world, we seek escape from that realm to the spiritual world. With the Renaissance, in Marsilio Ficino, the soul became fully divine, the divine returning upward to the divine. Man's ability to know God came not from revelation, but from introspection. We know God because our nature has its divine part, a piece of God. Ficino did not consciously oppose Christianity. He was pressing home the implications of the common ground of all religions as he understood them. Man was for him a microcosm who includes in himself all that is in the macrocosm, so that man is thus the center of the world and the key to knowledge. Quote, if one with all this before his eyes will not admit that the human soul is a rival of God, he is undoubtedly out of his mind, says Ficino. End quote. As Nygren commented, describing Ficino's position, quote, since man is fundamentally a divine being, he cannot bear to see in God any perfection and power which he does not himself possess. He is inflamed with desire to vie with God. So Nietzsche was not the first to think, if there were gods, how could I endure not to be a god? Thus spake Zarathustra 2:2. What is new in this idea is the hypothetical beginning and the negative conclusion. Quote, thus, there are no gods, end quote. It is not a far cry from Ficino to Nietzsche, who replaces God with a Superman, and to Feuerbach, who conceives God as the projection of man's wish fantasy, end quote. The essential humanism of Neoplatonism thus leads to Ficino, Nietzsche, and Feuerbach. In its less open forms, it is humanism parading as the most devout Christian piety, high-minded and spiritually minded. Neoplatonism's infection of thought and life in the early church, as well as the medieval era, is well known. Its infection of the Reformation's heirs, of men like Jonathan Edwards and many of the Puritans, is well established but less recognized. Neoplatonism was present to a minor degree in the great Dutch Reformed thinker Abraham Kuyper, and some of his heirs have constructed a whole new world of Platonic forms or ideas as a substitute authority for the Word of God. Neoplatonism is very much with us, although its terminology has changed. The new world of ideas and forms for many Neoplatonists in the Reformed tradition is, quote, common grace, end quote, a new world of natural law, ideas, forms, and universals in which our quote-unquote Reformed Platos find their freedom from the restrictions of Scripture. For Neoplatonism, when it becomes fully consistent, salvation is not a divine transaction and miracle, but a thoroughly human one. Man's spirit, reason, idea, form or plan or planning saves man from his body or from the world of material necessity, so that man is transferred from bondage to matter, from the kingdom of necessity to the world of mind or spirit, the kingdom of freedom. The modern form of the ancient Greek dialectic is nature and freedom. The world of nature is the world of material necessity, bondage and slavery. The world of the bourgeois or middle classes with their materialistic money grubbing. The world of nature is also the world of sex and of women, seen as physical and materialistic creatures. The world of freedom is the world of mind or spirit, Hegel's Geist. It is the world of ideas, forms, reason, and planning. Man's only hope is to impose his idea or plan on the material world and compel it to be a servant of freedom or mind. For this reason, planning to the 20th century Platonist, as to all utopians, is a religious necessity. It is the way of salvation. The gospel of Sir Thomas More was his utopia, wherein man's mind imposed its ideas on all of the world of matter. For More, wives were to be selected after being inspected naked. Their minds were not important enough to count. So unimportant was matter or particularity, so little was it the world of the spirit, that wives were to be chosen without regard for the unity of mind and matter, naked on inspection like cattle. For Aristotle, women were misbegotten males, an inferior form of humanity, more material, and Plato wondered as to whether women could be called reasonable creatures. Aristotle held that men, slaves, women, and children all have souls. However, quote, although the parts of the soul are present in all of them, they are present in different degrees, end quote. Women thus have less soul than men and are thus more material. As a result, the Neoplatonist tradition has tended strongly towards a hostility to women as the principle of sensuality and materialism. The implication of More's principle, which he applied to his daughter, was that women are at best essentially flesh rather than spirit, and hence like cattle to be inspected physically before marriage. The feminist movement, despite its serious errors, has some justification, in that the Neoplatonist movement has consistently treated women with contempt. In the Bible, women are presented as no less intelligent than men, nor any the less capable of redemption. The question is one of authority, not of humanity or dignity, whereas in the Neoplatonist tradition, women are seen at times almost as a different species, or at best a very inferior form of man. The influence of Hellenic thought on Islam is a marked one, and women are the victims of it. Islam is a good example of men setting up a sexual order for their gratification, all the while insisting that men are rational and spiritual, and women are coarse, materialistic, and sensual in nature. They are also supposedly inferior to men. The Bible teaches not the inferiority of women, but their subordination, a very different thing. Inverted Neoplatonism glorified nature and therefore women. The troubadours of medieval and Renaissance Europe downgraded love and marriage because it belonged to the world of grace, which they identified as the Platonic world of spirit. Adultery, on the other hand, belonged to the world of nature. The wife was thus a low creature, and the illicit lover a queen of love. As Valency noted in writing of such adulterous love, quote, "However illicit it might be from the point of view of religion and society, it had the sanction of nature. As matters stood, it was grounded on firmer stuff than the marriage bond." End quote. Quote, "The sanction of nature," end quote. This is the key. Two worlds exist for Neoplatonism, as for all dialecticism. They are alien to one another, so that, however much they exist as one, the world of matter and spirit, nature and grace, or nature and freedom, are somehow at odds with one another. If one is favoured, the other must suffer. If the sanction of nature, illicit love, is exalted, the sanction of grace, lawful marriage, must be downgraded because it is in principle unnatural for love and marriage, nature and grace to be compatible. For Scripture, however, there is no such dialectical tension. The warfare is not between matter and spirit, nature and grace, or nature and freedom, but between sinful man and God. Man, by his sin, has declared war on God, and as a result is in a state of tension and warfare because of sin, not because of a dual nature. Man's problem is moral or ethical, not metaphysical. Neoplatonism not only misrepresents the problem man faces, but by making it metaphysical, makes it necessary to truncate or castrate man of a basic aspect of his being before he can be delivered.